Deebo, 8 carries, 37 yards in the game, or it might have been 36. He had 1 catch for 1 yard in the game. Aiyuk, 6 for 62 and a game-winning touchdown. Kittle, 13 for 151 and a touchdown. Those 3 guys accounted for 72% of the 49ers offense. You got some yards from Jeff Wilson. You got some big yards from Jennings. You got a few yards from Juszczyk and Hasty. But the big 3 on offense, Kittle, Aiyuk, Deebo, 72% of the offense. It's funny, really, Jeff Wilson had more yardage than Deebo Samuel did, but Deebo scored that huge touchdown. On defense, Nick Bosa, 2 sacks, 2 hurries, 2 TFLs. I don't know what the final grade will be, play after play after play, but he disrupted every play, it felt like. I think watching him today, it kind of hit me. I think one of the most remarkable things about Nick Bosa is that it looks like he never gets tired. He is as impactful in the fourth quarter as he is in the first quarter, and actually he might be more impactful in the fourth quarter than he is in the first quarter because he's going at the same speed that he was when the game started, and the offensive linemen who've been trying to block him all night can't possibly be.
I think Khalil Mack had a 2-year stretch where his effort level, consistently play in, play out, was as good as it gets. I think J.J. Watt had probably a 3-year stretch because it's just hard. I mean, eventually you get injured. You just kind of got to save yourself. Bosa's having, a season where his motor consistently, every game, all game, every snap, every rep is just at a 10. And really, Guy, if you remember, there was a hands of the face that he got a sack. I mean, he would have had more. He would have had another sack that got negated.
On Ambry Thomas.
On Ambry Thomas, which I think, the hands of the face, that play call or that penalty is a little ticky-tack, but I get it, the letter of the law. I just forwarded you something in your DMs about George Kittle. It is a remarkable stat. This is the 4th time in his career that he has had 150 yards and a touchdown. That broke a tie with Shannon Sharp for the most by a tight end in NFL history. So 150 yards receiving in a game and a touchdown. I think we think of it because all these tight ends are wide receivers. It doesn't happen that often. The Kelce's, the Gronks, this guy in his last 2 games, against Seattle in the loss, he was 9 for 81, and then today he was 13 for 150. These numbers are not normal for tight ends, right? Because even Kelce, in the peak of his powers, when he's averaging 10 catches, probably a little less than that, I guess, for 16 games, but 7-8 catches a game, a lot of his work is within 20 yards of the line. Kittle they run him on go routes. Part of what Kelce has that Kittle doesn't is Kelce has his teammate is one of the greatest deep threats. So that's where they balance out. Kittle sometimes is used to stretch the defense, right? Run him down the seam. They run him on deep flag routes toward the corner of the end zone, or definitely just the corner, of the sideline. But he's running longer breaking routes, right? And even it's kind of crazy that Gronk's not on this list. But as a tight end, it's difficult to get 150 yards. That's pretty crazy. It shows you what a great player Shannon Sharp was in the peak of his powers.
That's an incredible stat. I think really you go back to the Seattle game where he had the game that they needed him to have, right? 9 for 181, 2 touchdowns. So he's had, what did we just say? He's had 4 in his career?
Yeah, it's his tight end record now. 4 games the most for any tight end with 150 yards and a touchdown in a game.
It's the second in as many weeks. Shannon Sharp had the lead, was ahead of Kittle 2 weeks ago.
I know
so Kittle's had 2 in 2 weeks. Is he going to have another one in this week against Atlanta?
He's liable to do it at any moment.
Is he going to go 3 straight? Has anyone ever done that? I can't imagine. Yes, if the record's 4.
Well, I think what's crazy about George.
Tony Gonzalez never did this.
I know. Well, because again, guys, they're not running as far. Jimmy maybe. But Tony Gonzalez is not running as far down the field as you think.
Well, I'm just saying, there are guys. My point is, there are receiving first tight ends who haven't done this. This guy blocks. This guy does everything, and he still produces like he's playing just for Sean Payton, and he's split out, and he's trying to convince the arbitrator he's a receiver.
I don't want to say he was having a down season because he got banged up. The quarterback situation was a disaster, but he has 57 catches on the season. He has 22 the last 2 weeks. So he's going to end up with a 75 catch season. But at one moment, you're like, is Kittle only going to have like 40 catches? This is what makes him a truly unstoppable player. And I think Deebo's going to fall into the same category because his receiving stats are not going to look as good as they should, but they've used him as a running back the last like 3 or 4 weeks, right? So it's like he was fine. He was accumulating yards. You had to watch, like if you just came back and hovered on the Niners, on their skill guys, and just looked at Aiyuk, Deebo, and Kittle, and just looked at their stats, they're not going to lead the league in anything, like those 3 guys. But if you've watched, especially the second half of the season, as they've clawed their way back, they have been remarkable. And they had to be today on a field with star players. Like Joe Burrow is going to get $150 million one day. Jamar Chase is a star wide receiver into his rookie season. T. Higgins, I don't think you can ask for anything more out of a second-round pick, right? He's been awesome for them. What they've like, teams would die if T. Higgins second round. Like that's awesome. That's a fantastic draft pick. Joe Mixon is on a big contract. Like they got studs, and the Niners studs were better.
Trey Hendrickson too, I would say. I mean,
stud, and he got knocked out of the game.
Yeah,
that guy's fucking pretty big and good.
Walked off on his own power, but you saw in the first series of the game, he got a sack on that first third down.
Yeah, and I think did they call him also for a hold? Like Trent got called on a holding, which is a little ticky tack on him. Like that guy's good. That guy's 8 straight games with a sack. That guy. So you're playing a team with.
I mean, he was an all-pro last year. An all-pro. Might have been the most unnamed all-pro in the NFL in 2020.
That's my point. You were playing a team with. I just think us coastal elites. We just not watching that many Bengal games.
But I don't think anyone went into this game thinking they sucked.
No, I know, but I don't think we quite. You and I did, but just the casual fan, which understandable. I'm not even talking shit. They have star power, and the Niners' star power didn't match them. They overcame them. They had to. Like the Falcons next week don't have that level of star power. Like this was. Those guys just kept coming.
Yeah, if you said to me, why did the Niners win this game? I'd say they're stars plus, and you pointed this out while we were watching the game. The Niners' defensive line is pretty. It starts with Nick Bosa. But it doesn't end with Nick Bosa. Like, they are a relentless defensive line, and maybe part of it is it feels like Bosa plays every snap, and then there's 9 other guys that are rotating and making a bunch of plays for them at different points. In every game, one of their guys makes a bunch of plays for them. And it feels like it's been different every week. DJ Jones made a couple of big plays. I know they lost the Seattle game, but DJ Jones makes big plays. It's just Amanihu made a big play today on that pass deflection. They just, I mean...
Not sure Ebukam did anything, but the other guys did.
Yeah, Ebukam had 2 quarterback hurries and a forced fumble.
Do you know what they got Trey Hendrickson for? Like, this is what the Niners need to do this offseason. They need to locate a Trey Hendrickson and sign him for 4 years, $60 million with a $10 million signing bonus and $16 million guaranteed at signing.
The guy was an all-pro last year.
He got $16 million guaranteed at signing. That's what they gave him.
He was an all-pro. How does that happen? He's an all-pro.
Yeah,
not a Pro Bowler, an all-pro.
$16 million, guy. That's what they gave him. This is 2021, right?
Yeah. Those are 21. Those are not 21 numbers.
They essentially. Do you know how great this contract is? It's essentially a 1-year deal. Which I got news for you. They're not going to cut him. But that's what, like we talk about star player. Part of as they transition, They are going to have the opportunity because guys like that hit free agency for whatever reason. You know, you could probably nitpick him. He might be a little stiff, whatever. And you're going to have some cash. If you can nail a couple signings, you can accumulate a couple more impact guys because your core guys, Kittle, Warner, none of these guys are going anywhere. Deebo, Aiyuk, right? Trent, like you have a core group of studs. You are going to have. Now, then the whole other question is, like, can Trey then be good? But utilize that little extra nut you got, which 25 from Jimmy. The extra money you just get from the salary cap going up. The Niners are going to have a decent amount of wiggle room.
By the way, I'd say to the Saints, like, how do you guys have no cap
Well, they don't have any cap. They don't. They have none.
How? I know.
Because they pushed Drew Brees' contract back for like 17 years.
I know. I think they're paying him like $12 million this year against the cap.
Can you imagine that? Like, is that got to be the worst feeling? The Niners haven't quite gone through this yet. I guess they actively chose to get rid of Buckner. But it's like, we would love to keep this guy, but we literally don't have any money.
And then he turns out to be cheap.
You're like, Jesus, exactly.
Like, all right,
So it's like,
it was 60 million guaranteed. Fine. No, it was 16.
I'm sorry, some heads would have rolled before I would have let that
Golly.
guy walk for $16 million.